Tonight on Primetime Politics, Greg Fergus under attack.
For the good of the institution, of Parliament, and the enduring interest of the House of Commons, I regret to say that the Speaker must go.
Conservatives are once again calling for the Commons Speaker to resign, this time questioning his ability to be impartial for an invitation that used what Tories say was inflammatory language about their leader and their policies. Can the Speaker stay? We will speak to the House leaders. And
the key issue here is targeting the root causes of the criminal behavior.
A government announcement on auto theft policies, but was there anything really new that might protect Canadians from an increasingly violent crime? We will speak with the Justice Minister. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. Conservatives are once again trying to push Greg Fergus out of the Speaker's chair, reacting to an online post inviting people to a Liberal event with Mr. Fergus. But more troubling for Conservatives is the language that was used in the post, saying, quote, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives propose reckless policies that would risk our health, safety and pocketbooks, end quote.
When he was elected Speaker, his extensive partisan history, from being the president of Young Liberals to national director for the Liberal Party to parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, among other offices, gave many members of this House pause about lending their trust and goodwill to him. Regrettably, his subsequent actions have done nothing to dispel these concerns. If anything, they have only been heightened. During his 7 months as Speaker, he has repeatedly engaged in questionable partisan behavior for the good of the institution, of Parliament, and the enduring interest of the House of Commons. I regret to say that the Speaker must go. Failing that, it is incumbent upon this House to take action immediately.
Now, the Bloc Québécois says its members will support the Conservative call to remove Fergus from the Speaker's chair. As for the Liberal Party, they say the offending line was a mistake and was added automatically by a computer program. The Speaker's office says Mr. Fergus did not approve the text. Well, to talk about all this, we're now joined by Conservative Deputy Whip Chris Warkentin and NDP House Leader Peter Julian. Hello to both of you.
Hello. Hi, good to be with you.
Now, we're going to start a discussion, but I do want to note that an invitation was given to the Liberals to join us today, but obviously that is not taking place. So, Mr. Warkentin, I'm going to begin with you. The Speaker's office says it was basically a miscommunication with the questionable text posted by the Liberal Party's website. It was done without the Liberal Association knowing about it. Does that address your concerns at all about what you saw online?
That could be the absolute same excuse that he's given time and time again. It's always somebody else did it. Usually it's the Liberal Party of Canada or the Liberal Party of Ontario. Then he says it was done without his knowledge. He didn't believe that it was going to be, it wouldn't, be structured in the way that it was. And then, of course, inevitably he won't be able to prove that any of that is true. So the question is why this Speaker has so many experiences where he does partisan activity, blames it on the Liberal Party, and then says that he's completely innocent and nobody should look any further. The question is for this particular Speaker is why is it that he is the only Speaker that has not only done this once, but now 3 or 4 times?
Mr. Julian, what's your take on it now that we've heard some explanation from the Liberal Party?
Well, it was an apology from the Liberal Party, and we demanded an apology. I think given that what we saw was Liberals, without the authorization of the Speaker, posting something that was highly inappropriate, even though the Speaker runs all of his communications through the Clerk of the House, which is the way it should be. The fact that he was blindsided by this Liberal Party post is absolutely disrespectful to the office of the Speaker and to the House of Commons. And the Liberal Party showed a stupid disregard and disrespect for the Speaker. Now that the Liberal Party has apologized, that's, I think, important. But the reality is the Conservatives have been very erratic around this. You'll recall last fall, when Speaker Rota made a huge mistake in judgment. The Conservatives were going after the Liberal Party of Canada. The NDP stepped up as the adults in the room, and we asked for his resignation in a respectful way, but we asked for it nonetheless. And eventually Speaker Rota resigned. Now this time the Liberal Party is clearly at fault, and the Conservatives, instead of going after the Liberal Party of Canada, are now going after the Speaker. So this kind of erratic nature of how Conservatives approach things in the House, I think is tiring to everybody. The reality is, you look at Mr. Warkentin's letter, there's only one paragraph on the Post. The 3 pages are all about Mr. Poilievre having been asked to withdraw his very disrespectful, unparliamentary comments. And it's like the Conservatives just don't want to get beyond.
You should actually read the letter.
Mr. Poilievre was so inappropriate. So inappropriate in the House, and all members of all parties except the Conservatives all agreed that the Speaker acted in an appropriate way by asking Mr. Poilievre to withdraw. He didn't withdraw, he didn't apologize. He was forced to leave the House for 1 day. Since then, Conservatives have been better behaved, and that's important, I think. We need to get down to the work of this summer, and the next few weeks means passing the NDP's bill on pharmacare. It means passing the NDP's push for affordable housing. It means passing the NDP's anti-scab legislation. It means passing the NDP's school lunch program. All of these things that the NDP has forced the Liberal government to do are things that parliamentarians should be concentrating on, rather than trying to get another psychodrama around the Speaker's position.
Mr. Warkentin, how do you respond to that? Because, you know, your members, many of them have been expressing concerns about Mr. Fergus even before he was elected to the chair officially. Is this a bit of a grudge match? Is this a bit of a personal grudge to get at the Speaker from the Conservatives?
There was so much misinformation. What Peter just said, it's unbelievable that he's able to do that with a straight face. But here are the facts. There was reservation and concern from a number of parties in the House of Commons before this Speaker was elected. He had been former president of the Liberal Party. He had been the parliamentary secretary for the Prime Minister, defending Justin Trudeau time and time again for scandals that had no excuse. He was doing that up until just days before the Liberals, along with the NDP, elected him as the Speaker in the House of Commons. We know why the Liberals want the Speaker to be the Speaker in the House of Commons is because Greg Fergus favors the Liberal Party. The question is why does the NDP not want to have a referee in the House of Commons that is actually fair, that isn't just a partisan appointment by the government? We understand why the Liberals want him to stay there. We just aren't sure why the NDP wants. They've never given an explanation. They misrepresent the facts. Mr. Julian talks about the letter. Well, the letter actually cataloged the offense after the offense after offense, and included Mr. Julian's own words. When another report was written on this Speaker because of partisan activity, it was exactly this Peter Julian that said if there was one more example of it, they would certainly vote to get this guy out. The question is what deal has been struck now, and why all the misrepresentation of the facts?
Yeah,
so I didn't interrupt Mr. Warkentin, and because I don't believe that that's an appropriate thing to do. You'll recall he interrupted me repeatedly. The reality is the Conservatives are in a grudge match because they lost the Speaker's election.
That's false.
They had their preferred candidate. That preferred candidate did not get the majority of the support of members of Parliament. And so ever since then, they've been engaged in a grudge match. Now, we have a Speaker who today
your own comments
asked and here again, the disrespect.
Your own comments about
the
Speaker.
The disrespect,
you said if there was one more time,
you
said if there was one more time, one more example, you would vote against him.
See, this is what Conservatives want to do. They
just
want
holding you to account.
The whole thing down. So today we had the Finance Minister being obliged to withdraw her comments and to apologize. Why isn't Mr. Poilievre capable of doing that thing that most Canadians do? Most Canadians understand
Mr. Warkentin, please let Mr. Julian speak.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, this is the Conservatives' wrecking crew. They act like thugs in the House of Commons. Absolutely inappropriate. And here again, we see another example. So Mr. Poilievre refused to withdraw, refused to apologize. He was put out for a day, and the Conservatives now, every day is a grudge match to them. It's highly inappropriate, their actions in the House of Commons. The Liberal Party of Canada had a highly inappropriate posting. They have apologized for it now, and they've apologized profusely to the Speaker of the House of Commons, and that's the way it should be.
Mr. Warkentin, I'm wondering if you could draw and compare, though. Of course, Mr. Scheer used to be the Speaker in the House. He went on to lead your party, obviously making very partisan arguments during the campaign. Why extend to him the courtesy and the benefit of the doubt to be impartial and not extend it to Mr. Fergus?
Never once did he do that when he was in the Speaker's chair, not once. There wasn't one single example. What we have is misrepresentation by the NDP after misrepresentation about the facts in this case. The question is why doesn't the NDP believe that there should be an impartial adjudicator in the House of Commons? That's a simple question. The answer has not been forthcoming. We have the testimony of Mr. Julian. Mr. Julian went to the media and said if there was one more example of this type of partisan activity, the NDP would be voting to expel this leader. The NDP has refused to stand by Mr. Julian's own words. The question is why? What deal was struck? The Liberals don't have a panelist on this panel today because they've got one. They've got one in Peter Julian. The NDP and the Liberals are working together to ensure that this cover-up continues, that there isn't transparency, that there isn't an assurance of a fair Speaker in the House of Commons. The question is why?
Except, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Julian.
I let him speak with his wild, wacky conspiracy theories. This is, again, the Conservatives trying to block everything in the House of Commons, including pharmacare, that the NDP has forced this government to put into place. Anti-scab legislation, again, affordable housing. These are all things that benefit people. Conservatives want to block everything. They want to turn attention to weeks of psychodrama around the issue of the Speaker, when it's something that the Speaker didn't do. The Speaker did the right thing and went through the clerk, and the Liberal Party of Canada blindsided him and have now fully apologized to him. But Conservatives don't want facts. They don't want explanations. They don't actually want Parliament to work. They want to break it down. They want to burn it to the ground. We've seen repeated examples of this from Mr. Poilievre, and I think Canadians are getting tired of this ongoing drama that Conservatives want to bring to the House of Commons rather than getting things done for people. People in Mr. Warkentin's writing, about 17,000 will benefit from the pharmacare legislation that actually provides support for diabetes. It's $1,000 a month for people in his riding that are paying for diabetes medication now. There are about 25,000 people in his riding that will benefit from the contraception that will be provided free. And so these are things that actually benefit people in his riding. And you'll recall, for dental care, thousands of people have signed up in his riding, 5,000 or 6,000 seniors, 2 million right across the country, and we're seeing hundreds of thousands sign up every week. That's because the NDP brought dental care that will actually benefit seniors, benefit people with disabilities, benefit families with kids under 18. And the Conservatives object to any help going to any Canadians at any time. They just want to burn the House of Commons down.
Mr. Warkentin, the Bloc, as I said, they're willing to support the Conservative motion. However, we're hearing from Mr. Julian, they're not going to support it. The Liberals are not going to support it. At the end of the day, Mr. Fergus will still be the Speaker of the House. What does that mean then about how your party will function in the House with Mr. Fergus continuing in the Speaker's chair?
Well, we're going to continue to fight for Canadians. Unfortunately, Mr. Julian has this rose-colored glasses on right now, believing that everything is great for Canadians, that life has never been better. But I can tell you that well, here he is interrupting me again, like he promised that he wasn't going to do.
Let Mr. Warkentin speak, please.
Again and again. The question is why the NDP continues to fight the efforts of our party to axe the tax to ensure that the vast majority of Canadians that are now paying more in the carbon tax than they get back could have a tax cut to ensure that they can enjoy the summer without the carbon tax. The question is why the NDP continues to oppose measures to actually make more affordable housing available to Canadians across this country. Unfortunately, we're currently in a 40-year inflationary crisis, a cost of living crisis because of the work of the NDP and the Liberal collaborating to destroy this country. The question is not about Parliament working, it's about things working for Canadians. I mean, I understand that Mr. Julian and Mr. Fergus and Mr. Trudeau all want a very comfortable life. What I want is a better life for Canadians, and the Conservative Party will continue to fight for that.
Quickly, last 30 seconds to you, Mr. Julian.
Well, food price gouging. We saw, of course, Conservatives are all over the Loblaws lobbyists. We've seen the jacking up of food prices in a way that is hurting Canadians profoundly. Conservatives have not said one word. Pierre Poilievre hasn't said one word about that. Gas price gouging, just a few weeks ago in British Columbia, 30-cent spike a leader by the gas companies, oil and gas companies, who are subsidized by the Canadian taxpayer heavily as a result of Conservatives putting in place all of these subsidies. Not a word from Conservatives. They haven't had one word to help any Canadian at any point over the course of the last few years since Mr. Poilievre was elected. And that's why the NDP's voice and Jagmeet Singh fighting hard for Canadians is needed now more than ever.
Okay, although we did begin talking about Mr. Fergus, but I appreciate the thoughts both of you have shared with us this evening. Chris Warkentin, Peter Julian, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Well, time now for a look at what else happened in politics today. Canada's inflation rate fell to 2.7% in April. That is down from the 2.9% that was posted in March. Led by a slower growth in the price for food, the cooling in inflation continues a 4-month trend, and it helps bolster arguments for an interest rate cut from the Bank of Canada. But that will not be known until the bank makes its next rate decision, which will be on June the 5th. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says housing starts fell by 1% last month, with the construction of new homes down 9% year over year. Billions are being spent by all levels of government to boost housing construction, but housing starts are down in the country's 3 biggest cities, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And in Ontario, new construction fell to its lowest level since 2018, down by 37% when compared to April of last year. To Philadelphia now, where the Prime Minister was asked about the International Criminal Court today. On Monday, ICC prosecutors issued arrest warrants for top leaders of Hamas, plus the Israeli Prime Minister and his top defense official. Both sides are accused of war crimes. Prime Minister Trudeau would not say whether Canada supported the ICC move, but he does take issue with the equivalency being made between Israel and a group Canada has declared a terrorist organization.
Obviously, the International Criminal Court is independent in its work, and I've said from the very beginning how important it is that everyone respect and abide by international law. What I will say is troubling, though, is the sense of an equivalency between the democratically elected leaders of Israel and the bloodthirsty terrorists that lead up Hamas. I don't think that's helpful.
And finally, in Ottawa, the Deputy Prime Minister was forced to withdraw a comment she made about Pierre Poilievre today. When asked about decriminalized drugs by the Conservative leader, take a listen to what Chrystia Freeland said and how the Speaker responded.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is wearing more makeup than I am today. Now, I think it's wonderful.
Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I withdraw that comment.
Well, federal cabinet ministers interrupted their holiday weekends to talk about auto theft, the Liberal plan including proposing tougher penalties for auto thefts tied to organized crime and violence. It also includes new offenses for the possession and distribution of devices that facilitate the crime.
We will enhance intelligence and information sharing between governments, law enforcement agencies, and international police and customs officials. This will allow us to identify stolen vehicles more quickly at our ports and at rail yards, including the intermodal terminal here in the city of Brampton, and this obviously before the vehicles can be sent abroad.
Well, for more, we're now joined by the Federal Justice Minister, Arif Virani. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So a lot to talk about today, beginning with your government's auto theft plan. Your government, as we said, held this news conference on a holiday Monday, but why the need to essentially re-announce measures that were already announced in the budget?
I think it's really important that Canadians understand the steps we've already taken and the steps that we are proposing to take, and also what is causing some of the delay. Some of the measures that we talked about include measures that deal with following the money. This has become a very big business, a very profitable business for organized crime. And we know that if you stop money laundering and you deter the ability to hide money, you can actually intervene and break up these large and very sophisticated criminal organizations. We put in place measures in the fall economic statement, and we've doubled down on additional measures in the budget, both of which are being actively obstructed by the Conservative Party of Canada. And I think Canadians need to know that, because when people talk tough about law and order and stopping crime, but they're actually impeding our legislation, it makes me question their actual sincerity.
Okay, makes you question their sincerity, but in terms of getting a government agenda put forward, then what type of timeline are you looking at here? Can you get measures actually passed before the summer break, which begins in about 5 weeks' time?
I think we absolutely can. And I think if parties cooperate on efforts to keep Canadians safe and to keep vehicles in people's driveways as opposed to being stolen and potentially for export around the planet, I think we can absolutely get these things done. So the fall economic statement needs to be passed. That's a confidence matter. We're putting all of our efforts behind it. We're also putting all of our efforts behind the budget. And what I would also say, Michael, is that we had an auto theft summit in February in this city of Ottawa, and literally months later we are presenting legislation. That's a pretty quick turnaround in terms of the pace that Ottawa works sometimes. But we are doing this because we understand the urgency. I understand the urgency. This is a crime that starts out small, it expands, it leads to large profitable measures for organized criminals who then use it to fuel other illegal activities such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, narcotics trafficking, weapons trafficking. That is a big problem, and we are tackling it on a number of fronts. We've also made investments at the border with CBSA. We've made investments in guns and gangs units with the Ontario and the Quebec police. These are paying dividends. We're seeing more interceptions of vehicles, but we will not stop until we bring the numbers down. And we're thankful that some of the numbers are starting to come down, but more needs to be done, and we need to work with pace. We're willing to do that. We want all parties to do that with us.
Mm-hmm. And as you say, very much tied to both the fall economic statement as well as the budget. So we'll watch that. But, you know, while you're here, I also want to touch upon judicial appointments, because you did tweet earlier this month that you have now appointed over 100 judges since becoming minister last summer. 94% of vacancies is what you quoted in terms of now being filled. But what was the holdup? You know, you've been in this job for less than half a year. You've been able to fill up 94% of vacancies. What was the holdup before? Why did we not see judicial appointments being made as really courts and criticism were being raised right across the country?
Well, what I can say to you is that since coming into office, and it's been 9 months now, since coming into office, what I tried to do is diagnose the problem as best I could. And I'll tell you some of the steps that I've taken. So we've ensured that the duration of an assessment of a candidate lasts for a longer amount of time, so they're eligible for a longer period if they've been assessed. Secondly, the committees that do that assessing sit for a longer period of time, so I'm not struggling to make sure that the committees aren't lapsing and I have to reappoint the members of the committees. Security checks, amazingly enough, obviously they need to be done, but the security check for a person who is a low-level clerk at the Halifax Port Authority was treated the exact same way as the security check for a Superior Court judge in Ontario or Quebec. I said that doesn't seem appropriate, and we've changed that, so now judicial candidates are bumped to the top of the security line. I've added to my staff, I've emphasized to my team how critical this is. I've worked in a dogged manner to get through as many appointments as possible, and we've now done 106 in my first 9 months, and the comparison to the previous government is that the Harper government used to do about 65 every 12 months. So the pace is literally twice as fast, but the work's not done. But I also want to emphasize that I will continue to work with pace, but secondly, that even if I had a magic wand and I was able to fill every vacancy tomorrow, I don't think you necessarily see backlogs immediately disappear. Backlogs are informed by a number of things: the need for more virtual trials, the need for more legal aid, the need for more court personnel, the need to adapt to the post-COVID world that we are living in. There's a lot of factors at play. I'm trying to work closely with provincial counterparts to try and address some of those features so that we can meet the needs of the justice system around the country and administer justice in an effective manner and an efficient manner, and that upholds and maintains people's confidence in our justice system.
Mm-hmm. Now, you do a comparison there with the Harper government, although a lot of the delays that were being noted was during the third term of a Trudeau government, a Trudeau administration. And, you know, in the last few months alone, we've seen charges stayed in 2 child sexual assault cases in Toronto Superior Court. And again, that's just an example. What does your government say to the victims and their families when justice was denied thanks to delays created by the lack of judges?
Again, what I would say is that, first of all, any situation where families are aggrieved and they're victims, they're hurting, my thoughts and sympathies go out to those families and to those victims. And people want to see justice delivered on a timely basis, and I'm doing my utmost to address exactly that. What I would also say is that people need to reflect upon what is causing the delays in the system. As I mentioned to you, I do not believe the delays are being solely caused by a lack of judges, but where they are being influenced by a lack of judges, I'm doing my utmost to fill those vacancies as fast as possible. The number of judicial vacancies is now touching around 4% around the country, and I'm tackling them in every jurisdiction where I find them. I'm working with absolute pace on addressing this issue. What I would also say is that I will not stop in terms of addressing it. I'm working collaboratively with judicial partners at things like a court modernization committee, but also with people like my provincial analogs, such as the Provincial Attorney General in Ontario and in other provinces. That's really, really important. And what people should be assured of is my emphasis is to cure ourselves of vacancies as fast as possible and address them everywhere that we're seeing them.
Now, before you go, because quickly running out of time here, I do want to talk about your online harms bill. Certain online groups, as I'm sure you know, have called it Orwellian. They say that it will give police the power to arrest people for hate speech made in the past. It even got the attention of Elon Musk. So I'm wondering, when you see all that criticism right now and the speculation online, what does that say to you about the kind of discussions that still need to be had for people to actually understand what you're proposing with this law?
So I think a lot of conversations still need to be had. I think people need to look closely at the law and think about it and reflect on what's there. I'll just give you a few examples. Free speech in this country is protected. Hate speech is not free speech. Hate speech is not protected in the physical world in Canada. All we are proposing to do is translate that protection against hate speech that exists in the physical world and transfer it to the online world. That's the first point. The second point is that the definition of hatred that is being used is a very high one. The notion that somebody who's a stand-up comedian at Yuck Yucks is going to get rounded up by the police is simply absurd. Absurd. This does not cover offensive jokes, it doesn't cover comic material, it doesn't cover hurtful statements. It covers things that express detestation and vilification. So an off-color joke or racist humor is one thing. Calling for the extermination of a race is another thing. That's what triggers a concern about hatred. That definition is not my definition, it is a definition from the Supreme Court of Canada that should give people some sense of understanding about the objectivity of the situation. The fourth thing I would say to you is that I swear an oath that is unlike any other cabinet minister. I swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, including the Charter, including your freedom of expression. I take that very, very seriously. By way of an example, we are not the first mover in this kind of legislation. We're about the 6th or the 7th mover internationally. We've looked at all of these other international examples. We're not repeating their errors. In France, they went too far. Their law was struck down because it was overbroad and violated freedom of expression. We're not following the French example. Germany proposed a whole bunch of different types of content, and they said eliminate all of it within 24 hours. We're not following the German example either. The Brits put forward a law that talks about private communications, and they will wade into private communications. We are not doing that. Private communications are exempt from this bill. What we are saying is that there are two types of content that have no place in Canadian society: child sex material and revenge porn. I firmly believe that, and I think every Canadian firmly believes that. What we're trying to do is protect children, we're trying to protect adolescents, we're trying to protect adults, and that includes from hatred. And the notion that people believe that you might be rounded up by the police for simply posting something online that is a bit off color or a bit insensitive is simply false. That is not what this is about. This is about looking at a Supreme Court definition of hatred, applying that Supreme Court definition of hatred, and targeting people that would call for and propagate hatred against groups. That's an important distinction to be made, and it needs to be made over and over.
Minister Virani, thank you for this. I really appreciate the time this night.
Thank you.
And that is Primetime Politics for this Tuesday. I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. Primetime Politics is back tomorrow evening. Until then, take care.